on the front of Marc-Andre Fleury trades, why don't we share that report we saw earlier today?
Sure.
That we knew about this. We knew the Hawks and Leafs had a deal worked out for Marc-Andre Fleury. This was we
didn't know the details.
Right. We know the details now, or at least the details are being reported as such. And remember, this caused a rift between the Kyles.
Yeah, the Kyle D fight.
Yeah.
So this was, it's multiple reports from multiple places, but all pieced together. You could find this information on thehockeynews.com from Nick Barden, not Bardown, Barden. He writes, according to John Shannon on the Bob Cowan podcast, Toronto had a deal to acquire Marc-Andre Fleury from Chicago in 2022. We knew that was a possibility. However, Leafs president Brendan Shanahan decided against the trade. This is to quote John Shannon on that podcast, says, Kyle Dubas had a deal in place to acquire Marc-Andre Fleury. It was done. It was a done deal. They could have had Fleury from Chicago before he got traded to Minnesota, but Brendan vetoed it. There was a deal in place. They needed the stamp of endorsement from the president of the Leafs for it to occur, and it did not occur. The deal, according to TSN's Darren Dreger, was reportedly Marc-Andre Fleury and Brandon Hagel going to the Toronto Maple Leafs in exchange for Peter Mrazek, Matthew Nyes, and, quote, first-round picks, end quote.
Well, smart move by Brendan Shanahan, I would say.
Well, here's the funny thing. The Blackhawks still got...
But they'd be good with Hagel.
They wouldn't have had to go out and get Domi and Bertuzzi and Reeves if they had Hagel.
Is he the form of all three of those guys?
He's better than all three of those guys. He does what they want those three guys to do.
That's true.
And
That's
better.
True. Yeah, I mean, the Blackhawks still got Mrazek. They still got
picks.
Three
first-round
picks for Hagel, and then the Mrazek trade.
The only thing they didn't get was
Matthew Nyes. Yeah. I mean,
it still worked out pretty well for the Blackhawks.
Yeah, Chicago still worked out. It still worked out pretty well, but man, that was interesting to get those details, because we figured, okay, the Fleury deal that fell through, that probably would have been more than what they got from Minnesota, considering that the deal fell through. So Minnesota came in, and you're like, well, if the more valuable deal didn't go through, you got to go to your second option, which was a lesser value for Fleury. But man, that trade would have made one of our earliest shows a lot more interesting.
Well, yeah. And I will correct myself, because I was screaming at Kyle Dubas, saying he had no stones and he was afraid to make a move. Mm-hmm. And I kind of owe him a little bit of an apology.
Yeah, now that we've learned,
he tried, and he was over.
And that's not the only time that has happened.
No, that's
according to many reports.
Yeah, a lot of that, like especially during the off season when he was, surprisingly, they were going to bring him back, I think, and then basically, when all that was going on,
he wanted to spend more time with his family,
right, in Pittsburgh.
As the Penguins GM,
they a lot of those reports start coming out that he was overrode a lot, and because you got to take everything to a board.
Right, yeah.
The team's run by a board.
So annoying.
So that's why they're not, whatever. But I officially apologize to Kyle Dubas for questioning his testicular fortitude back in March of 2022.
And if anything, kudos also to Kyle Davidson to have a deal where that kind of return is coming to you, multiple, according to reports, first-round picks, a stud young power forward at the time coming out of college, and what would have been your replacement to Marc-Andre Fleury in Peter Mrazek earlier than expected. Hey, that would have been pretty darn impressive.
Yeah,
he still got it done, but in different ways. But still, that deal would have been pretty impressive, and that would have been one of his. That would have been what, his first deal, or one of the first? Because the Hagel And Fleury
I think
trades were like
that was his first official
first few deals.
Yeah, Hagel came before the deadline.
Where was Lafferty?
That was the next season.
That was last.
Oh, you're right. Yeah.
Yeah, because this would have been the 22.
first
This would have been the
trade-
22 trade deadline.
His first trade was getting Lafferty.
That's what I'm saying.
yeah.
Acquiring
Oh yeah,
Lafferty.
for
yeah.
Nylander.
That was
right.
his first trade.
That worked out.
And
And
then,
that was as interim GM.
right. And then the Hagel was his first trade as
real
full-time,
GM.
and that came
Yeah.
a few days before the deadline.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But see, I wonder if he was able to use that Toronto deal to then as leverage to get as much out of Tampa as he
For
did.
Hagel, probably. Yeah.
Because he probably was like, "Hey, I've got this potential deal here. What are you guys going to do?"
I mean, honestly, out of the two at that time, Hagel and Fleury,
And Tampa were probably
you had more value for Hagel.
Oh, absolutely. And Tampa and Toronto were going against each other because they knew they were have to beat each other at some point.
Yeah, they
in the
probably would have
playoffs.
had to either face each other or jump each other in the standings at the point.
I mean, you could argue, and Tom says so in the chat, like Hawks might have gotten a better deal in that because, first of all, if you have Nyes, you don't get Bedard. He makes the team better last year if he's playing.
He was in college last year.
He played for the Leafs at the end of the year.
at the end of the year, yeah.
But I
They
mean,
were already
he-
in the playoffs at that
2
point.
points makes a difference, though.
Sure.
He wouldn't have made it here in time for the end of the season.
Matthew
though, 'cause he
Nyes
was
would have been playing instead of Buddy Robinson.
He would have played maybe 2 or 3 games.
Think about the butterfly
Yeah.
effect there.
Yeah, you're right. But still, I mean, I think that is a wise no from Brendan Shanahan. That's a lot.
It is a lot, yeah.
Yeah, but
And let's remember,
they were.
we all
going
love
for it.
Marc-Andre Fleury. He's the second winningest goalie of all time. Congratulations to him. He's a lot of fun. He was not very good that year. And he went to Minnesota, was
towards
not
the
very
end
good.
of the season, yeah.
Well, he
Yeah.
wasn't very good in the beginning of the year either.
Yeah, like he's
October, he was terrible.
Well, the team was god awful.
Well, it was the Colleton clown car experience, but
members of.
he like November to like early February he was good, and then like it does every year it seems for him, at least recently, wheels fall off.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I mean,
mid-Feb.
So instead, you get Radish, Kachuk, Oliver Moore, whoever they take this year, and the first you got for Mrazek is Sam Renzel.
Sam Renzel.
So you got Renzel Moore, another first round pick this year, and and
a
then
20-goal
Radish-
season out of
Radish
Taylor
Kachuk.
Radis last year.
Yeah,
And
two guys that have filled NHL spots during a time where you need guys who could fill NHL
Right.
spots.
Mm-hmm.
You can argue as much as and as you said earlier, Nyes has 16 points in 40 games. Granted, probably playing a much lower level. I mean, they tried, I believe, at the beginning of the year to make him the new Michael Bunting or Zach Hyman, the big guy, the power forward on the top line.
yeah.
But he'd be playing a much higher role.
He would
here.
consistently be in the top 6.
Yeah.
Yeah.
By
I mean,
He
16
would have
points
to
on the
be.
Hawks, he'd be third in scoring right now.
yeah, right.
Yeah, with much more opportunity.
We all silly like the mayor.